Welcome back to Weekly Briefing. Now it's your time for the favorite part of the show, the panel discussion. Wednesday, President Joe Biden delivered his farewell address from the Oval Office, ending his 5-decade-long career in politics. Biden spent most of the time painting a grim picture for America and less time recapping his accomplishments or lack thereof. Over the last 4 years, he warned Americans that, in his view, an oligarchy of wealthy people abusing power in America were getting ready to reclaim it. Take a listen.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power.
Donna, a tech oligarchy taking rise in the United States. What did you make of this final lion's roar from the aging, outgoing President Biden?
Okay, that's rich coming from a White House that colluded with all the tech industries to censor conservative speech. All of a sudden, there's a level playing field for conservatives to get their message out there, and he has a problem with it. I mean, how many of his administration threatened the Twitter, threatened Facebook, all of that, to censor information? The biggest machine for misinformation was his administration. That he sucked on that he attacked the American people with. Imagine. Parents were considered domestic terrorists because they were standing up for their children. So the warning that he is giving us is the warning that what his side of the aisle and his administration did to the American people. And I'm going to tell you something. Thank God this nightmare is over, because that's what I've lived through for the last 4 years.
Lee, when you think about the tenor of that speech that Mr. Biden gave, obviously he's outgoing, he's a one-term president. The people elected Donald Trump with a mandate, first Republican presidential candidate to win the popular vote in 20 years. Were you surprised by the tone that he struck in this speech?
Well, it was an aggressive and negative tone, but you could imagine, a lot of that is because of the policies of his administration. And, you could think about if he had delivered a truthful speech of his real legacy. It was that his administration pressured social media companies to remove factual information from their platforms during the pandemic. It was pushing EV mandates. It was using his first veto to defend ESG investing. It was the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I think the American people are ready for a return to common sense. They're ready for permanent tax relief, real spending reforms, and it's exciting that it seems like all of that is right around the corner.
John, what is the legacy of the Biden administration, President Biden as president? He obviously painted what he believes will be a very grim picture of the country as it stands right now, but he didn't talk a lot about things that he did. He kind of spoke about what the future, what he believes looks like under Trump. How will Americans remember Mr. Biden?
Dan, complete and utter delusion is the way they're going to remember him. You look at the speech that he made. He called his farewell speech. It was like his good riddance speech for everybody else. I mean, the guy is like Fantasia. I mean, he's living in some kind of an alternative universe that makes no sense. I was thinking when I was seeing it of the film Who Killed Roger Rabbit, where you go into the Cartoon Network. I mean, that's basically the world that he's living in. And he's up there, he makes a comment about crime is down, the lowest in 50 years, violent crime. You can't take your family out in the street in any major city in the United States without taking your life in your hands. Crime is up, the FBI says it. He just makes up stuff. But, one of the most fascinating things he says is, we have to be sure that the rich are paying their fair share. We have to be sure that, people aren't getting tax breaks they shouldn't. Didn't you just pardon your son for evading taxes to the IRS? Mm-hmm. This is the epitome of hypocrisy, a complete delusion. But look, the guy's got dementia. And then you saw it when he was on They promoted it as live, but it didn't look live to me because the windows were blacked out. So basically that thing was taped. But, you know, it's like how many of these farewell speeches has he had? It's like the tour of the Eagles, right? They had they were having their farewell tour for 3 decades. It just goes on and on and on. The good news is that's it. He's done.
He certainly is. Is there anything ironic, Donna, about him calling this a tech oligarchy, rise of power of like the powerful and wealthy, when he just honored George Soros, giving him one of the medals?
That's the most ironic. And you know I'll tell you the biggest relief for me. He has set black people back 100 years, and thank God he's gone, because everything he did was to make sure that he demeaned African Americans. We're too stupid to get ID cards. We can't get a job unless they give us a carve out. He took black men out of the black community and permanently put them in jail. We were the ones that he pushed for segregation during his career. He didn't want schools to be integrated. I mean, this guy, look, he had the KKK playbook, and he destroyed, the black community. And good riddance to him. I hope that they never get someone else in office that can create the kind of harm that he's done for black people. I mean, I have to repair my own reputation because of him, even though I worked my butt off.
It certainly is. And I think that's a big reason why President-elect Donald Trump won with the mandate that he did. Well, moving on, the Senate held confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill for Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, Marco Rubio, and many other Trump selections to hold key cabinet positions in his upcoming administration. This week on Tuesday, Hegseth set the tone. He was questioned by the Senate Armed Services Committee for 4 long hours. In his opening statement, Hegseth promised to bring warrior culture back to the armed forces. Take a listen.
As I've said to many of you in private meetings, when President Trump chose me for this position, the primary charge he gave me was to bring the warrior culture back to the Department of Defense. He, like me, wants a Pentagon laser-focused on lethality, meritocracy, warfighting, accountability, and readiness.
Lee, this was seemingly the most controversial cabinet selection by the president-elect, one that the media really sunk its teeth into, was trying to sow division and basically potentially sabotage his confirmation. What did you make of Hegseth's hearing and his performance in that?
Yeah, he was the nominee that Democrats honed in on and tried to make him the most controversial nominee of the slate. However, I think what the American people saw, anyone that watched that on TV, was he was prepared, he had the policy knowledge, he had the expertise and the experience. It was a much different, he came across in an excellent way compared to what he had been portrayed at. And the Democrats showed that they were not organized. They had no real strategy. They weren't focused on policy. It was all about a smear campaign, trying to one-up each other and get a better clip for social media. And I think for Hegseth, I think there were a couple of themes that emerged from him, and he did a great job delivering it. It was accountability for debacles like the Afghanistan withdrawal, for the Pentagon failing every audit it's ever had. It was about standards to develop the most lethal fighting force this world has ever seen, maintain those standards for our military. And then finally, it's about peace through strength, something that President Trump talks about all the time. And under Biden, we've really seen the opposite of that. We've seen chaos through weakness on the world stage. And so I think many people who watch this are going to welcome the changes that Hegseth can bring to the Department of Defense.
John, I want to highlight one of the instances of the Democratic senators sort of seemingly have a lack of plan when attacking Mr. Hegseth this past week. Why don't we listen to what Senator Gillibrand said during that hearing?
You will be in charge of 3 million personnel. It is a big job. And when you make these public statements, and I get you were not Secretary of Defense then, I get you were on TV, I get you were helping veterans, I get it was a different job. But most recently, you said this in November of 2024, knowing full well you might have been named as Secretary of Defense. So please explain these types of statements, because they're brutal and they're mean and they disrespect men and women who are willing to die for this country.
John, this is just one of the examples of the ranting and the raving from the Democrat side. Do you think some of the performances like that from the Democrat side actually helped Hegseth make his case and look better?
Well, it's like the bar scene of Star Wars, basically, is what you saw out of this Democrat committee. I don't know if you couldn't write a script and say, what can we do in 4 hours to completely destroy our brand worse than it is now? That would have been it, right? That hearing would have been it. Here's what you do. It's almost like, what can we do in order to further prove why we got shellacked in this election? Not only did they not have a plan, their plan was, let's try to embarrass the nominee. The line of questioning was hysterical. It was ridiculous. It was stupid. It had no bearing on anything. And so you're looking at this and you're just shaking your head. What exactly is it that they're after? What do they want? What do they want? They have no agenda. You can't figure it out. But I thought Hegseth, look, he's been on TV a long time. When you come on these panels and you're on Fox News and you go to diners, you talk to people, obviously you're going to do very well on TV, and I think he did that. He was very prepared, and I think he hit a home run. And I think it set the tone of all of the hearings going forward, because that's now what people are looking for. And I think he did President Trump a huge favor, because as you opened, Dan, he was probably the most controversial of the nominees, and he hit an absolute grand slam home run right in center field, cleared the bases, and now it's going to make it easier for everybody else.
I think a lot of people share the same sentiment. And when we come back, Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire, potentially ending 15 months of fighting and bringing these hostages home. Find out more when we return. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back. On Wednesday, Israel and Hamas agreed to a ceasefire deal ending the 15-month war in Gaza. The first phase of the agreement includes a limited withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza and an exchange for 33 Israeli hostages for Palestinian prisoners. President Biden tried to take credit for the deal at a press conference celebrating the news. Why don't we take a listen?
Thank you. Brooks, credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
John, what did you make of the ceasefire deal? Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a possibility that Hamas may walk back on the terms that were a part of the ceasefire. What did you make of it? What did you make of the timing of the deal? What is your take on it?
No Trump, no deal, basically, number one. Number two, very reminiscent of January 1981, before Reagan put his hand on the Bible. Iran lets the hostages go because they didn't know what Reagan was going to do. They don't know what Trump is going to do. He said there'll be hell to pay. I don't think they wanted to take that chance. Post that ridiculous comment by Joe Biden, his State Department said they couldn't have got this deal done without President Trump's envoy there, Witkoff. So that was obvious. But a lot of people have criticized the deal, and I understand that. But the bottom line is this. If you, Daniel, have a loved one that is being held hostage, you want your family member or your friend, you want him returned or her returned safely. And so as many as we can get these hostages out, I'm for that. I don't really care how many people that are in prison got released. That doesn't matter to me. We got to get these hostages out. A ceasefire is a good thing. The carnage going on there is really beyond the pale of humanity. It's horrible. So this isn't the perfect deal. No deal is perfect. But I think for getting the hostages out and just getting a ceasefire, trying to hold that in place right now is the best thing for everybody involved. But without Trump, there is no deal. So for him to sit there and say, are you joking? No, we're not, because you basically are a clown show, and you couldn't have got this done without President Trump. If he was not coming in and had made those comments, this would still be going on.
Lee, jumping off of what John was just saying, this wouldn't have gotten done without President-elect Trump. He had been very forceful in the way he spoke about this, emphasizing that there would be hell to pay if the hostages were not released by January 20th. Do you think that rhetoric and the way President Trump spoke in a way that he said that he would rain hell in the Middle East if it didn't happen, do you think that played a role?
100% it played a role. And it was 8 days from the time he issued that statement to when this agreement was reached to release the hostages. And so this, again, achieving that peace through strength. We have a new sheriff back in town on the world stage, and that is Donald J. Trump. And so it's exciting to see everything that's happened already since Election Day, and those results came in from that historic election. This is just the latest example, and we're excited to see him take the oath of office on Monday.
Donna, is this a sign of things to come? Is Ukraine next?
Absolutely. Look, you know, we have to remember Joe Biden told Russia that you can do some things and we won't do anything to you, but we'll let you get away with it. Everybody knew that Biden was weak. So does Iran, Hamas. They know when Trump comes in here and says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. Joe Biden was always weak on the stage. He actually gifted Afghanistan billions of dollars worth of equipment to fight us. You know, he's letting in terrorists. Trump is not standing for anything. He's the one, like the parent that said, you better not, that the kids were listening. And Trump, when he says, I'm going to, if you don't turn back and if you don't do what we say, you're going to have hell to pay. Hell is coming. Hell is coming.
And they certainly heard that message, Donna.
And they heard that loud and clear.
They certainly did. And again, hell could still be coming if somebody walks back on it and Hamas breaches those terms. But President-elect Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States on Monday. Trump already has a long list of executive orders he would like to get in place on his first day in office. Stephen Miller has teased this. The president-elect has emphasized on the campaign trail that he would immediately sign some executive fiats and orders closing the border to illegal aliens and creating the largest deportation operation in American history to stem the border crisis. Why don't we take a listen?
On my first day back in the Oval Office, I will sign a historic slate of executive orders to close our border to illegal aliens and stop the invasion of our country. And on that same day, we will begin the largest deportation operation in American history, larger even than that of President Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Lee, it's been reported that we can expect shock and awe on day one from President-elect Trump's new term in office. What do you think we can expect?
Well, it's classic Donald Trump and the art of the deal. I mean, he's laying down these markers to negotiate from a position of power on behalf of the American people. And I think the border was obviously one of the top issues in the November elections. I mean, the way that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris just left our border wide open, millions and millions flowed into our country illegally, making every state in our country a border state. And our communities have been devastated by fentanyl, illegal drugs, human smuggling, and trafficking. And so this is refreshing. I mean, this is the change of pace that we need for this country to fix the border. And there's so many elements of Donald Trump's agenda that he is looking to pursue on day one. I mean, undoing these Green New Deal style policies. I mean, remember when Joe Biden promised to build 500,000 EV charging stations by 2030? I think he only built 7 of them over a 2-year period. And then another thing I'll add is, you know, President Trump's administration is the most friendly towards education freedom and empowering parents that this country has ever seen, especially with Linda McMahon set to lead the Department of Education. I mean, she's looking to follow the lead of more than a dozen states that have given universal education freedom to parents to really give children across our country a better future. So you just can run down the list of policies that the Trump administration has teed up. There really is a better day ahead of us for this country.
Donna, thinking back to the primary, the GOP primary, to see who would be the nominee, President-elect Trump was always pressed by the legacy media. Will you be a dictator, sir? Will you be a dictator, sir? And he answered, I'll be a dictator on day one for 2 things: closing the border and drill, baby, drill. What can we expect on the drill, baby, drill aspect of things?
Oh, I mean, we're going to unleash American energy. We're going to make prices go down. It's going to be more affordable for working class families. Actually, the price of everything that we get is dependent on energy. And he's going to make sure that American families can afford to live in this country with some kind of dignity and respect. And thank goodness, because the only thing this administration has done is attack fossil fuels to the point where financial institutions wouldn't give them the capital they need to be able to provide Americans what they so badly need, and that's energy, affordability. Look, energy poverty is real, and guess what? For the first time, people with six-figure incomes fall under that same category. And that's because this Biden administration has done everything it can to destroy the abundance of energy, because the bottom line is they don't like people. When Kamala Harris got up there and said we need to attack fossil fuel and depopulate the earth, she was saying the truth. And that's what she meant, and that's what this administration's goal this prior administration's goal has been. But Trump loves people. He understands what we need to have this country working properly.
You know, John, it's fascinating. Trump already has a track record of 4 years of success in the White House. What do you think will be different this time around in a positive light? What do you think will be a little bit different about Trump 2.0?
The legacy opposition media, the regime media, has collapsed from within. That's going to be the biggest difference. I mean, here's basically the Democrats' response to President Trump coming in. Let's get MSNBC to hire Rachel Maddow back full-time. That's their response. I mean, this is basically what they're doing. Look, lace them up and lace them tight. Even when you get to the White House press briefing room that you and I will be in, and by the way, we're not going to get any sleep at all, because this guy is going to, every day there's going to be 18 things we have to do, because it's going to be so fast and furious. But even there, remember you and I going, and all the fake news media had the first 3 seats, and we had to stand in the corner and stand in the back and all that stuff. All that's changing. But the basic thing is, in his first 4 years, there was such a legacy regime, fake news media of organized opposition. Well, that has melted away to a couple of clowns, and basically Rachel Maddow, that's it. So we're going to be in a very good position, you and I and others, to be able to go to the White House, tell the truth every day, get the facts out, and we're not going to be overwhelmed by CNN and MSNBC and these others that were basically attacking him. I mean, remember, kids in cages, all that nonsense we went through. That was Obama's thing. Yeah. This is going to be the biggest difference in this Trump 2.0, if you call it, is he's not going to have that level of opposition. I remember when he was inaugurated in 2017, like the 2 days after that, they had that Million Women's thing that was in there with the pink hats, right? I remember staying at the hotel and all these women, they were all pissed off. There was a million of them coming, right, with the pink hat day, Donna, whatever the heck they called it. Well, there's no pink hat day this time.
No.
Where'd they go? They're not there. Nobody's coming on the opposition. That's going to be the biggest difference.
They vanished into thin air. And panelists, we have about a minute left. It's time for our crystal ball question. President Joe Biden wrapped up his 50-year career in politics this past week. Panelists, I want you to gaze into your crystal ball and tell me one thing that you specifically remember about President Biden's tenure in office. Donna.
No, he destroyed the American economy in 4 years. That's, you have to be really good to be able to do that in such a short period of time.
You certainly do. You and a lot of Americans remember him for that. Lee.
While Americans were facing record inflation, he was advocating for the largest single tax hike in American history by letting the Trump tax cuts expire. And so I'm grateful that President Trump, Speaker Johnson, leaders in Congress are looking to renew those tax cuts, make them permanent in the new year.
John.
Having to consider getting a second job to buy eggs.
A third job.
Basically it.
A fourth job,
Carton of
perhaps.
eggs, yeah. $12 for a carton of eggs.
It's brutal. $1 for each egg. But panelists, that's all the time we have. Great picks. We appreciate you joining us here in Washington, D.C. on the eve of President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration. Thank you so much for joining.